Under the cold fluorescent lights of the prison hall, Luna Nozawa sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the small television mounted high on the corner wall. The broadcast flickered between static and image, but what she saw on the screen was enough to ignite the shadows that had never left her mind. Will Spencer and Electra Forrester, two names that used to mean nothing to her, had now become the pillars of her new obsession. She had lost everything: her freedom, her power, her control. But as she watched them appear on talk shows, in glossy magazines, smiling and flaunting a love story that the world envied, Luna saw something else beneath the glamour: weakness. Their smiles were too rehearsed, their touches too calculated. And in that fragile space between appearances and truth, Luna saw her opportunity. Even from a prison cell, she could still play God. Luna began to follow their every move. She read every article, memorized every line of Will's speeches about redemption and honesty, and studied Electra's photos, searching for cracks. Her obsession was not driven by jealousy, it was by instinct. Luna believed in patterns, in the repetition of mistakes, and she could sense that beneath their perfect facade, there was a hidden fracture ready to split. What started as curiosity became strategy. Luna reached out to a journalist, anonymously at first, feeding bits of rumor that Will had lied about being assaulted, that Electra knew but stayed silent to protect her position in Forrester and Spencer's intertwined empires. Within days, whispers became headlines. The past, once buried under layers of power and denial, began to stir again. For Will, those headlines were like blades reopening old wounds. The world had already judged him once, the prodigal son, the privileged heir who dared to show vulnerability, who spoke of trauma that few believed and fewer cared to understand. He had spent years rebuilding his image, transforming pain into advocacy, telling himself that truth could heal. Yet now, with Luna's manipulations spreading like poison through social media and tabloids, he found himself standing on the edge of disbelief once more. This time, it was worse, because the attack did not come from strangers. It came from those closest to him. Electra tried to hold him together. She had built her life around calm precision, the elegance of self-control that the Forrester legacy demanded. But as Will's paranoia grew, her composure began to crack. He started questioning her loyalty, her intentions, her love. When the subpoena arrived, demanding Electra's appearance in court over the allegations of withholding information, she felt the walls closing in. She had loved Will not because of his name, but because she saw in him a reflection of her own fragility, a soul craving to be understood rather than admired. Now that love was being dissected under the merciless light of public scrutiny, Bill Spencer's reaction was swift and ruthless. For him, love had always been secondary to legacy. His son's name, the Spencer name, was a brand, powerful, dominant, and immaculate. The notion that Will's reputation might crumble under a new scandal was intolerable. He hired private investigators, lawyers, and crisis managers. Katie, meanwhile, tried to soothe rather than fight. She had seen too much pain in her family to believe that force could fix what was already broken. She begged Bill to let Will handle his own battle, to let him stand or fall by his own truth. But Bill only knew one language: control. As the case unfolded, Forrester Creations found itself dragged into the chaos. The boardroom became a battlefield of whispered accusations and strategic alliances. Steffi, determined to protect Electra, her cousin and one of the company's rising stars, stepped forward as her advocate. She knew Electra's integrity, her heart, and more importantly, her fear. Zend, torn between family loyalty and legal expertise, volunteered to assist, not out of affection but out of a sense of justice. In contrast, the Spencer lawyers worked relentlessly to dismantle Electra's credibility, framing her as a manipulative woman who used Will's trauma as a ladder to power. Inside the courtroom, the air was suffocating. Every word, every glance carried weight. Will sat at the defendant's table, hands clasped tightly, his knuckles pale. He could feel the ghosts of his past closing in, the shame, the self-doubt, the fear that maybe, after all, The world was right about him. He wanted to believe that Elektra loved him, but the evidence, fabricated videos, distorted audio, anonymous testimonies, blurred his reality. Luna's plan had worked. From her prison cell, she had unleashed a psychological storm that neither walls nor guards could contain. The videos appeared online first, clips showing Will in moments of vulnerability, confiding in someone unseen. The voice on the recording was faint, almost whispering, but the implications were devastating. It suggested manipulation, consent twisted into accusation, and suddenly the public was divided once again. Some believed Will had fabricated his past trauma to gain sympathy. Others saw him as a victim of a new kind of betrayal, the digital kind, where truth could be edited and trust could be rewritten. Elektra's world collapsed alongside his. For the first time, she faced the possibility that loving Will might destroy her career, her name, everything she had worked for. Yet, walking away felt impossible. She could not abandon him, not when he was unraveling before her eyes, his mind trapped between memory and illusion. But in private, she began to question herself. What if she had missed the signs? What if Will's truth had never been the whole story? The trial became more than a legal proceeding. It was a psychological autopsy. Every witness, every testimony, seemed to dissect not only facts but emotions, who loved whom, who believed, who lied, and why. When Elektra took the stand, her calm voice betrayed the tremor beneath. She spoke of love, not strategy, of the nights she spent comforting Will through nightmares, of the man she believed in despite the world's doubt. She insisted she had never hidden anything, that her only sin was loyalty. But across the room, Will's gaze wavered. He wanted to believe her, yet the paranoia Luna had planted had taken root too deeply. Luna watched the trial on the small screen in the prison rec room, her lips curling into a smile that no one saw. She had become a ghostly puppeteer, her hands unseen but her influence everywhere. She fed information through intermediaries, exchanged letters coded with secrets, and manipulated both truth and fiction until they were indistinguishable. But even in victory, Luna was haunted by her own reflection. There were nights when she lay awake, wondering whether she had truly destroyed them or simply mirrored the destruction within herself. For Will, the descent was merciless. The recordings, though clearly edited, gnawed at his sanity. He began to see betrayal everywhere, in the way Elektra looked at him, in his father's careful words, in the silence of friends who once swore loyalty. His mind became a labyrinth where every turn led back to doubt. He started avoiding mirrors, terrified of the man looking back at him. The trauma he thought he had conquered returned, this time disguised as self-loathing. Katie noticed it first, the empty stare, the sleepless nights, the way Will's voice trembled when he spoke of trust. She tried to reach him, but the walls he built were impenetrable. Bill, on the other hand, refused to acknowledge the psychological decay. To him, weakness was an enemy. He pushed Will to fight harder, to deny everything, to reclaim control. But control was exactly what Will had lost, over his image, his past, and now his own mind. The verdict came, but it meant little. The court dismissed the charges for lack of evidence, but the damage was irreversible. The public no longer saw Will as a hero. They saw a shadow, a man whose truth had been contaminated by lies. Elektra, though vindicated, found no peace. The relationship they had built on trust now stood on a fault line of suspicion. Every embrace felt hollow, every conversation filtered through invisible doubts. They had won the case but lost each other. Then came the final twist, the footage Luna had hinted at but never revealed until the end. A newly released clip surfaced, showing the night of Will's original assault. The angle was unfamiliar, the voice behind the camera eerily calm. It wasn't Luna's doing after all. Someone else from within the prison had obtained it, using Luna's chaos as cover. The truth, or what resembled it, was out, but by now Will no longer cared. The world could debate his guilt or innocence. He was lost within his own mind. In the following weeks, Elektra tried to salvage what remained. She offered him patience, therapy, a quiet place to heal. But Will, consumed by paranoia, began to believe that Elektra was part of the conspiracy. He accused her of orchestrating the tapes, of using his trauma to gain fame. Each accusation broke her a little more, until she, too, started doubting herself, not her innocence, but her strength to endure him. Steffi and Zend, watching the collapse from afar, understood that the courtroom had only been the stage. The real trial was happening inside Will's mind. Bill and Katie fought again, this time not about money or control, but about whether their son could ever recover. Katie still believed in redemption. Bill saw only the ruins of a dynasty. And in her cell, Luna received a letter. It contained a single line: "You opened the door, but I walked through it." It was unsigned, but Luna didn't need a name. She knew there was always someone darker, someone willing to go further. For the first time, she felt fear, not of punishment, but of being outplayed. The story of Will and Elektra became a cautionary tale whispered through Los Angeles, about love turned into liability, about truth devoured by perception. Forrester Creations suffered in silence. Spencer Publications waged war on public opinion, and the once radiant couple disappeared from the spotlight. Luna, locked behind bars yet omnipresent, had reshaped their world without ever leaving her cell. But in the stillness of night, as the guard's footsteps faded, Luna stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The satisfaction was gone. The chaos she had unleashed no longer thrilled her. It haunted her. The very delusion she had planted in Will now crept into her own mind. What if she hadn't orchestrated it all? What if someone had used her, just as she had used others? What if the game she started was never really hers? Somewhere outside those prison walls, Will wandered through sleepless nights, haunted by the same questions. He could no longer tell if the camera that had filmed him was real or imagined. The paranoia that Luna ignited had become self-sustaining, feeding on silence, thriving in shadows. And Elektra, the woman who once believed love could heal anything, learned that love, when infected by doubt, becomes its own kind of prison. In the end, there were no winners, only fragments of truth scattered among the wreckage. Luna's plan had succeeded beyond her imagination. She had destroyed faith itself. From her cell, she had proven that reality is fragile, that love can crumble under the weight of suspicion, and that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a knife, it's belief. And so, under the quiet hum of prison lights, Luna smiled once more, a smile not of victory, but recognition. She had become the reflection of everything she hated, the liar, the manipulator, the prisoner of her own creation. The world outside had fallen into madness, and for once, she wasn't sure who had truly won, the woman behind the bars or the ghosts she had set free. When Luna Nozawa first appeared on The Bold and the Beautiful in 2023, she entered the canvas as a breath of sweetness and light. She was positioned as the kind of girl who brought calm to chaos, soft-spoken, polite, and impossibly sincere, a young woman who seemed untouched by the cynicism and corruption that pulsed through Los Angeles and Forrester Creations alike. In her earliest days, she was written as a gentle echo of characters like Elektra Forrester, someone who reminded viewers of the innocence and optimism that once defined the show's romantic soul. Her charm rested in her simplicity, a wide-eyed intern eager to prove her worth, to learn, to love, and to find a place in the glittering yet ruthless world of fashion. But as time unfolded, that innocence began to unravel thread by thread, revealing a darkness that no one, not even the most cynical viewer, could have anticipated. At first, Luna's journey seemed like the classic soap narrative of a naive girl navigating temptation. Her budding romance with R.J. Forrester was pure, youthful, and awkward in the most endearing way. R.J., the beloved son of Ridge and Brooke, saw in Luna something uncorrupted by family feuds or power struggles, a mirror of what he once was before his family legacy consumed him. Luna's wide smile and trembling nervousness around him gave the impression of a first love born from honesty rather than ambition. But even then, subtle cracks existed beneath the surface. Luna's curiosity about Zend, her slight attraction to danger, and her fascination with what lay beyond the boundaries of her moral comfort hinted at a hunger she didn't yet understand. The turning point came not from a grand revelation, but from a whisper, a single decision that spiraled into moral decay. Fans recall the now infamous moment when Luna supposedly took her mother's mints and ended up in Zend's bed, claiming later that she was drugged and confused. The scene was initially written ambiguously, allowing viewers to interpret it as a tragic mistake, an accident born from manipulation. But as time passed, speculation brewed. People began to ask whether Luna's confusion was genuine or staged, whether her words were a defense mechanism or a weapon carefully designed to destroy reputations and reframe herself as the victim. Then came the shocking fan theories that would later prove true. Luna, it turned out, hadn't been drugged at all. She had orchestrated the event, seducing Zend intentionally and then allowing the world to believe she was an innocent pawn in someone else's game. Her confession that RJ was a boy, but Zend was a man became a haunting emblem of her transformation, a declaration that she craved not love, but control. Luna didn't just want affection. She wanted to possess the men who desired her, to hold the power of manipulation in her hands like a newfound jewel. The once timid intern had discovered that vulnerability was its own kind of seduction, and she began to wield it like a blade. This moral corruption deepened as her lies multiplied. Luna's duality, the facade of innocence masking a calculating heart, became her defining trait. When she first killed Tom Starr, the man she believed to be her biological father, it was not framed as an act of self-defense or madness, but of confusion and rage born from abandonment. The act shattered any illusion that her darkness was circumstantial. Luna had crossed a line, and the guilt that followed did not reform her. It liberated her. Once she realized she could take a life and still smile in the mirror, she became addicted to the thrill of control. Killing Hollis, who had uncovered evidence that could expose her crimes, was no longer about fear but about preservation of her new identity. Luna's transformation was so radical that fans began to question not only the character's morality, but also the writer's intentions. How could such a once-beloved, innocent figure devolve into a manipulative murderer? The answer, as revealed by actress Lisa Yamada herself, was both unsettling and fascinating. During a candid conversation on the Soapy podcast, Yamada admitted that her character's descent into darkness was partially her own doing. What began as a casual remark at a Christmas party, a drunken wish to play a villain, evolved into a creative decision that rewrote Luna's destiny. "I told Bradley Bell I wanted to play someone bad," Yamada confessed. "I didn't mean a murderer. I just wanted her to have an edge." But Bell, known for turning impulsive suggestions into soap gold, took that statement literally. The sweet, doe-eyed intern became one of the most chilling female villains in recent B&B history. Yamada spoke with gratitude rather than regret. "Honestly, I love it," she said. "I got to explore so much love, rage, madness, survival. It's been the most challenging role of my career." Her performance captured something rare, the slow corruption of purity not through trauma, but through desire. Luna's darkness didn't come from being broken. It came from realizing how intoxicating it felt to hold power over others. Every deceit, every act of violence, became part of a grand self-portrait, a rebellion against the identity she once despised. Psychologically, Luna's transformation mirrored a larger commentary on how innocence can be weaponized in modern storytelling. At first, she was the image of the perfect ingenue, a product of romantic ideals that viewers had seen for decades on The Bold and the Beautiful. But by shattering that archetype, the writers forced the audience to confront their own complicity. They had loved Luna for being good, but what did good even mean in a world where morality was just another costume to wear for survival? Her transformation into a killer, manipulator, and seductress was both horrifying and mesmerizing, precisely because it subverted the expectations that had kept the show predictable for years. As Luna spiraled deeper, her crimes grew more deliberate. The attempted murders of Steffi Forrester and the shooting of her grandmother Sheila became metaphors for her internal war, the destruction of both her moral and familial roots. Steffi, the embodiment of strength and authority, symbolized everything Luna wanted to defeat. Sheila, whose own legacy was steeped in madness and survival, was both mentor and mirror. By shooting her, Luna metaphorically tried to destroy the part of herself that recognized the same madness within. Yet even as she drowned in guilt, her composure never faltered. The smile, the softness, the gentle tone remained. That was what made her terrifying. She didn't rant or scream like a villain. She whispered and smiled. She made cruelty look elegant. The most disturbing part of Luna's evolution was not her crimes, but her ability to justify them. She saw herself as misunderstood rather than evil, convinced that the world had forced her to become what she was. This delusion made her compelling, because she believed in her own virtue even as she left bodies in her wake. Each lie was another brick in the fortress she built to protect her fragile self-image. The tragedy of Luna Nozawa lay in her awareness. She knew she had gone too far, yet she couldn't stop. The thrill of dominance, the rush of deceit, had replaced the simple pleasure of love. When Yamada reflected on this arc, she revealed that Luna's story had been designed as both a character study and a commentary on the duality of modern womanhood. "I think she's what happens when innocence is no longer rewarded," Yamada mused. "When being the good girl stops working, the only way to survive is to become what they fear." It was a chilling truth, one that resonated with audiences who saw in Luna's descent not just madness, but rebellion. The decision to have Luna commit escalating acts of violence, from seduction and deception to murder and attempted arson, was controversial, yet it forced viewers to reconsider how easily a character's moral compass could shatter under pressure. Was Luna inherently evil, or was she a product of a society that valued beauty and manipulation over sincerity? Her transformation echoed the fate of many female characters before her, women punished for their ambition, their sexuality, or their refusal to conform. But Luna's punishment came from within. Her sins were self-inflicted, each act an attempt to erase the version of herself she could no longer bear to be. The final episodes before Luna's imprisonment painted her as a paradox, both monster and martyr. She wept not for her victims, but for the innocence she had lost, an innocence she now viewed as weakness. Her scenes in the holding cell, where she whispered to herself that she never meant to hurt anyone, revealed the depth of her denial. Luna wasn't delusional in the conventional sense. She was addicted to her own narrative. In her mind, she had become the heroine of a tragic story, the girl who loved too deeply, trusted too recklessly, and was betrayed by a world too cruel to understand her. The show's decision to end her arc with a possible escape, her rumored plan to break out of prison, ensures that Luna's story is far from over. It raises haunting questions. Will she seek revenge, redemption, or reinvention? Will she return to Los Angeles as the same woman, or as something even darker? The beauty of Luna's storyline lies in its ambiguity. She is both the victim and the villain, the mirror and the mask. For Lisa Yamada, Luna's journey is a performance of emotional extremes. It required her to embody both fragility and ferocity, to make viewers sympathize with a killer and fear a girl who once smiled like a child. Her portrayal blurred the line between acting and confession, as if Luna's descent mirrored a universal truth about human nature. That beneath every good intention lies the potential for cruelty, and that even monsters believe they are the heroes of their own stories. In retrospect, Luna Nozawa's arc stands as one of the boldest experiments in the bold and the beautiful's modern history. It dared to dismantle its own formula, the eternal cycle of romance, betrayal, and forgiveness, by injecting pure psychological horror into its heart. Through Luna, the show asked a question it had long avoided. What happens when love no longer redeems, when beauty becomes a weapon, and when innocence itself turns lethal? As Luna now sits in her cell, plotting what fans suspect will be her escape, her legend continues to grow. Some viewers call her irredeemable, others call her revolutionary. But everyone agrees on one thing: she's changed.